Here we go with our red beans and rice, New Orleans style. So here we have big sliced country bacon, getting nice and crispy. I buy mine at Costco where it's cheap and pretty good. And then we're starting with the vegetable ingredients. We have celery, bell pepper, mostly green, but I also like the red and the orange, garlic, and onions. Onions, which I don't have yet, but they will be here soon. And green onions, scallions, which you include with the tops and all, except I'm going to cut off some of these raggedy looking tops. Okay, first round of bacon is done, and the second round is the cooking away. Okay, so here, bell pepper is also part of this this recipe, and there's only one good way that I have seen to dice a bell pepper, and it's like this. I'll use this one. Put it upside down, cut off the stem, put it upside down, slice down right on the outside. You notice the interior, the core is all down, the seeds are all down here. So you're cutting this way, down here, and avoiding the core, because that's where all the seeds are and it makes a mess. I would say you get about 95% of the bell pepper doing it this way. And what gets discarded is this part here. You don't want the white anyway, because the white's kind of bitter. So away it goes, and you're left with these lovely pieces that you can dice at your leisure, which we'll be doing. Watch, I'll just show you. It's just like this. And then scooch them together. Dice away. For the beans, they don't have to be too small. They shouldn't be too small, because you want your teeth to be able to sink into them and understand what you're eating, what the flavor is. So if you do it too small, it becomes too difficult to discern what it is exactly you're eating. Onions. There's only one good way of chopping an onion that I know of. So the top is the branch end. This is the root end. So you want to keep the root end. You cut off the top, discard it. This gives you a flat surface to cut the entire onion straight down the middle through the root without cutting off the root. So this is how it's going to look. Okay? You can put a little nick here, to help you peel this off. These are Spanish onions, they're pretty tight. To chop the onion most efficiently, keep the root end down away from your hand. You make one lateral slice. Then I'm going to cut straight down. You can also cut radially if you feel creative. Straight down across the top. And now we have it cut across, right? So curling your fingers in like this so that your knuckles form a guard on your fingers. Don't ever cut like this, because you'll cut off a touch of your fingers. The knuckles are a guard. You grab it crab-like fraction. Just hold on to it from the sides. Cut straight down. Boom, boom, boom. Throw that in the way. Show you one more time. Since it's small, just make one lateral cut. Cut straight down across the top, 2 or 3 times, whatever you like. And then keeping your knuckles back, boom, 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 boom. And you're done. If it's a big onion and you want to save, you can actually go like this and cut these little ends off, but it's a small onion, so I don't care. Let's talk about celery. I cut it as close, when I cut the celery in order to chop it, I cut it as close to the root as possible. For the same reason as you hold on to the root of the onion, you can use this little end here to hold it while you chop the forepart there. And then you just discard the white end because it's not very nice anyway. Like almost every type of celery or leek or similar vegetable, it has some dirt in the end. You just rinse that off. Little macrobiotic, little dirt, throw you off your game. And to actually slice it, chop it, we hold on to this white end. Again, I don't need to have real tiny pieces for red beans and rice, because you want to have it so that you can taste what you're eating. By the way, don't ever cut, don't ever chop, don't ever use a knife that's slippery, that the handle is slippery with water or whatever. Always dry off your handle before using it, because otherwise it will slip in your hand and cut you, as it has done to me before. So look, that's what it looks like. The root end is holding it. This is how you hold your knife. You don't hold it like this, you hold it here with your thumb and forefinger on the base of the knife. And that's it. Cut off a little tip so that way it's kind of dirty. And using your knuckles as a guide, I'm going to use a chopping guillotine action in this because it's small and I can move it. You can see I'm pulling back my fingertips using my knuckles until I got what I want, which is just this part. Away we go. Here's another ingredient in the vegetable line, green onions. This whole thing gets chopped and put into the dish, down to right about here, I would say. So the green leafy part, the medium green part, and even a little bit of a white part, but not the root. I'm going to chop that now. I can't show you how I chop it because my videographer has figured off. There you go, nicely chopped up. This goes down the disposer. Meanwhile, I'm back over here at the top. There's the bacon, which pretty much all of this is going to go into the beans. I spooned off some of the leftover bacon grease. You want some of it to fry your vegetables in because it gives it that good porky flavor. It's warming up at about medium-high heat. Garlic, next to godliness. Really the last of the vegetable items. You can crush it with the flat of your blade, which I would show you if I had a free hand. Or you can use a garlic press, like this one. My opinion, the best of all the garlic presses on the market, because you can flip it over and it cleans itself. But for the beans, I like to chop the garlic into relatively thin slices. I just think it's nice to bite into a nice chunk of garlic occasionally. Keeps the vampires away. Okay, just kidding when I said the garlic was the last stuff to chop up, because I forgot about this. Even though it's not fresh, it needs to be chopped up. Pimentos, delicious, delicious preserved bell peppers. They have a different flavor than the fresh bell pepper, and it's part of the essential red beans and rice oeuvre. Although I must admit that out of the jar it looks fairly unappetizing, sort of like, I don't know, leftover brains. Maybe I should have started this today with the actual beans. And these are the beans. They've been soaking almost 24 hours in salty water. The soaking makes them easier to cook. They'll cook more quickly, and they'll be more tender without being mushy, and they'll be easier to digest. Before we start with the vegetables, I'm going to dump the water out, rinse it down thoroughly, because we're trying to avoid killing each other with the beans. You know what I mean. Okay, here we go. We're almost ready to actually start cooking. Turn the temperature up to a little bit more than medium. And over here, we have the beans draining in this big-ass colander that I bought at Ross many years ago for mere pittance. I think it was like $5. It's the biggest colander I've ever seen. And here we have all of the ingredients ready to cook, and all these get stir-fried very quickly. That's why it's particularly important to have them all chopped up and ready to go. The French call this mise en place, where all the ingredients are in the form in which they're going to be cooked, pre-chopped, cleaned, etc., so that you can cook without interruption once the moment comes upon you. Especially with this dish that, as I said, everything gets cooked quickly. It's important to have everything pre-done. Other dishes where there's long lapses in time between different steps, you can step back and get some things started while still doing some of your prep work. But this one in particular, it's important to have all the prep work done ahead of time. So anyway, here we go with the cooking. While the oil is warming up, I'm just going to show you what we are going to actually season these beans with, and it's not much in terms of anything other than the vegetables. Most of the flavor is going to come from the vegetables. It doesn't require a huge amount of any other type of seasoning except for salt, some red pepper flakes, and of course good old black pepper. Onion, not as easy as it looks to do this one-handed. Stir that up. Get it nice and coated with the bacon grease. Get all of that porky goodness going. I'm a big believer in cleaning up as I go along. So at this stage, what I need in the onions to make them tasty is a little bit of salt. Remember, this is a big ass pot that I've got going here. It's a 17-quart pot. Because I believe in making massive quantities of beans and spaghetti sauce, etc. And then, because anything that I can freeze and eat on a later date, I make a lot of it. Eat some of it right away and freeze the rest, save it for family dinners, etc. Or for, the apocalypse, which is, as we all know, is going to happen any day now. The onions have had a couple of, the regular onions have had 2 or 3 minutes of sautéing, and now I'm throwing in Okay, the green onion, the regular onion. I threw in the garlic. I thought I was recording that, but I didn't. It wasn't. But it's going, looking pretty good. Garlic is nice and toasty. Onions caramelized. Now let's go with the bell pepper. Look how beautiful those bell peppers look. In you go. See how that tastes? Good. Gonna need a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. Okay, salt and peppering is done. I also took the opportunity to chop up this bacon into pieces about an inch square, more or less. Time to toss in the celery. Turn the temperature up a little bit more. Of everything that's cooking in this pot, celery is the stuff that would take the longest to break down. Really, all we're doing right now is just coating it with some of the flavors of the other vegetables. And then when the liquids go in and of course the beans go in, plenty of time for the celery to get soft. This is looking good. I like a lot of vegetables in my red beans and rice. Over a lot of years of making it, the versions that I like the best, the times that I made it the best, is the time that there's been a lot of vegetables in the mix. So what else is going in? Well, the pimento that we chopped up. Cento, I love this brand. Tomato paste. And then for the liquids, I can use water, but I prefer to use a good cooking stock, a vegetable cooking stock. The Swanson brand is very good. Here goes the pimentos. And there's no way that I can show you how I put the tomato paste in because I need 2 hands for that, but this is what it looks like. Okay, there's the pimento and the tomato sauce, the tomato paste that came out of this tube. Now we're stirring it up. There's a French cooking term for what we're doing with the tomato paste and the vegetables. Don't ask me what the term is, but I know that one exists. One of these days I'll have to look it up again. But the tomato paste sticks to the vegetables and really does something interesting to them that you don't get if you don't use the tomato paste in this step, in the saute step. Okay, we're getting close to putting the beans in. Yes. Okay, very important step that I almost overlooked. Hard to tell with all the steam, but at the bottom of the pan there's this crust that it's called the fond. F-O-N-D as in David. The fond. And the fond is the leftover residue of the various things that you've been sauteing in here. And that fond is incredibly flavorful, and no cook worth his salt should let it go to waste. So what we're doing now is with a bit of this vegetable stock, we're deglazing the pan, we're putting in the liquid, scraping the bottom of the pan to get up the fond, to get that flavor released into the vegetables and then into the beans, obviously. Yes, it looks like burned up gunky stuff, but it's flavor. Plus, you get it off now, you don't have to worry about cleaning it off the pot later. Deglazing the pan, or the pot in this case, to scrape up the fond. Always do it. Beans are ready to go in the pot. Oh yeah. And you can tell, it's going to be crowded in there. Let's stir it up. Start adding liquid. I'm going to go with the vegetable stock. The beans have to be completely submerged in the liquid. You can't have any beans floating on top of the liquid. So if you don't have stock, just add water. If you don't have more stock, just add water. Which I'll be adding more stock in just a moment. And a couple of other ingredients that are going to go in here while it cooks. Okay, look, liquids, everything is submerged, but it doesn't need to be so much water that you don't see the beans. This is just about perfect. I have added about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. There'll be more salt added as it cooks down. And I've added, let's say about 1 teaspoon of black pepper. And now I'm also going to throw in some of this red pepper flake. Yeah, that's good. Just a little bit for flavor. After it cooks down, add some Cholula or some other liquidy, vinegary type of hot sauce. Okay, I'm going to cover this up now and then clean up a little bit, and then I'm going to show you the last ingredient that goes in here before it starts to cook for several hours. Okay, that's better. It's always easier to cook in a nice clean kitchen. Counters wiped down, everything put away that you don't need to use at that moment. It's just much easier to work this way. So a couple of more ingredients coming for the beans. One are the aromatics that sort of go in towards the end, parsley and bay leaf, if I can find any bay leaf. Yeah, last little bedraggled bit of bay leaf that I had. I don't even know how long it's been up there in the cupboard, but it's what we have, and it's not worth the effort to go to the grocery store and fight the crowds for a little bit more of bay leaf. Okay, it's already starting to smell bean-like in here. I guess it's been on there long enough that it's gotten to a good boil. That's good. I'm going to turn the temperature down to lowish. Right, so that's somewhere between low and medium. It's going to be even lower than that in a minute. There are the aromatics, the parsley, my really, truly ancient bay leaf, man. I don't even, it still smells, has a little bit of smell, but not much. Desperate times, desperate measures. Okay, so now we're going to reduce the heat, stir in the aromatics. Put this down to like low. So it needs to be low for a good long time, for hours. And there's a couple more tricks to show you on how we make these beans. For now, I will say that I sure hope I can retrieve those ancient bay leaves at some point for reasons that I will explain subsequently. Anyway, this is good to go. Cover it up. Again, way to keep things neat. So the last ingredient, believe it or not, which is going to go in now, I'm still deciding whether to put it in one piece, is this piece of pork jowl bacon. It's cured and smoked, and it's just for flavor, just for pork flavor. I make these beans frequently when after like Christmas time or Thanksgiving or Easter, when we've ordered a honey baked ham and we have the ham bone left over, because there's usually a lot of meat left on those ham bones, and the bones themselves, the marrow inside the bone, gives these the beans a great taste. So my mom always saves the ham bone, makes sure that it doesn't get thrown away. It gets wrapped in aluminum foil and thrust into the freezer, pending the preparation of the beans. And she really loves the beans with that leftover ham taste. That my mom is from Peru, and in the highlands and La Sierra, in the mountain area of Peru, they have, I guess they have pigs, but they would also have alpaca. They would have other animals that they would slaughter and use for food. And they would take the larger of the bones and use them for flavoring of their soups and of their stews. And they would reuse the bones for quite some time. It was more than one use. And in fact, that bone, that type of bone, that stewing bone, is referred to as in Quechua, which is the language of that part of the world before the arrival of the Europeans. The name of it is mocontuyo. So my mom still refers to it as a mocontuyo. She says, "Guarda el mocontuyo." Make sure you put away the mocontuyo. Anyway, I don't have that because, no Easter celebration this year. So I've gotten this piece of jowl bacon, which I think it's going to be pretty good. So there it is. I thought about it. I'm not going to slice it. I'm just going to leave it in one piece. So this is jowl bacon. Jowl, of course, is part of the pig's face, and the Brits in particular love that part of the pig. They say it's the most flavorful part of the pig. Oh, the beans are cooking away perfectly. Notice that they're bubbling, but there's not a rolling boil. It's just a gentle bubbling. That's what it should be. So you want to come back and look at this every hour to make sure it still has enough liquid. I really think that in this case, it's going to need a bit more liquid. A little water is just perfect. Yeah, that's good. And now, get in there, buddy. impart your porky goodness to these beans. Come back and visit Mr. South in a few hours. Really, you should come back every hour, check on the beans, make sure they have enough liquid to cover them completely, and if not, add some more water. And then as you get going with it, you're gonna have to start checking the seasoning. You have to see if it has enough salt, enough pepper. Try not to overdo it on the salt, the way I always seem to do. It's been 4 hours. See how our beans are doing. Smells great. Looks very good too. Just almost exactly the right amount of liquid, so there's a piece of rid of those bay leaves while we can. Here's another one. Delicious. All right, let's try a bean. Let's bring one up from down below. Delicious. By the way, in case I didn't say it before, I don't think I did, these are red kidney beans. Delicious. All right, now, there's really one more step for this, and I'm going to show it to you now. Okay, so here's the deal. We're going to scoop out some of these beans, put them in a container. So we really want just the beans. We don't need that much of the broth, the caldo. And what we're going to do is we're going to liquefy. Make sure there's no bay leaves in here so we don't liquefy the bay leaf. I don't think it's a good taste. With our handy dandy inversion blender, which I love this thing. See it? It's like a blender on a stick. We stick it in here below the water level, below the liquid level, and we run it. And we puree the beans. Everything else that's in it gets pureed too. Okay, that's enough. Here's the pureed beans, and we're going to add it back to the pot. So why do we do that? Because we want to thicken up the broth. And as you can see, the beans, which are carbohydrates, done a very nice job of thickening up the broth so that you can have this as soup if you want, red bean soup. If you like it a little less soupy, you can simmer it down with the top off of the pot, that cover over there off of the pot. Let it simmer down until it's as thick as you like. My family, they like the liquid. They like the liquid for their rice. So I think it's probably going to stay this way. Here's that big piece of bacon. Still cooking down, but I think it's done its useful part. And we'll probably scoop out the fat parts at least and leave the meat behind, the actual lean part of the bacon behind. And that's it. So there was something that I almost forgot about the beans. And true New Orleans red beans and rice usually has some type of sausage in it. Usually it's andouille sausage, but you know, with the situation being what it is, I was able to get these naturally hickory smoked mild country sausage, which I've never had them before, but they look okay. And I'm going to slice them up and put them in the beans. That's the final step that makes it really a complete meal, huh? When you have this with some rice on the side, it's wonderful. Got my videographer back. Now we're just slicing up these country sausages. So these don't need to go, in fact they shouldn't go they shouldn't be cooked down too much, you know. You put them in there for 20 minutes, let's say, let them get heated through, release some of their oils, whatever. But like, you don't want to cook these for hours because then they'll get kind of mushy. You want them to have some bite to them, some texture to them. I always put my bowl down in the sink below the level of my cutting board so I can just knock things into it. With the beans, I'm going to cover it up. I did in between this video and the one before. I did let it cook down just a little bit more, and you can see that it's got a nice consistency. You know, the broth, the liquid part of the beans is nice and thick, but there's still a lot of beans in there. So now we will let this cook down for, I'm going to say, let it sit in there for at low for another 30 minutes or so. My analog timer on, and we'll be good to go.